Good day, guys. So on today's tutorials at dyict, I'm gonna be teaching you how to create an interactive and a responsive button on Figma. All right. Now, the importance of creating an interactive or a responsive button on Figma is whenever you're working with components or you're working with multiple frames and you're working with multiple button styles, the one thing first that you have to do is to make sure that your button is responsive to every test that you would want to input. So that's the most important part. So that you select your test widget. We can just navigate to the new Figma. If you're using the new Figma, just navigate to your bottom. You're gonna see all your character and input characters on Figma. So to begin with, make sure that you select your test type button. We're just gonna type button. After typing button, make sure that you select Shift A. Now, the reason for Shift A is so that we can be able to turn our test into an auto layout component. Now, as you can see, after taking Shift A, the button now turns into a frame, indicating that it has been auto laid. After auto laying, make sure that you navigate to your right panel. Now, when you navigate to your right panel, you're gonna see on the appearance, there is opacity and then there's corner radius. Then on the corner radius, we're just gonna input 10. All right. You're gonna navigate to your padding and then on your horizontal padding, while you are still on your right panel, make sure that you navigate under auto layout, and on the auto layer, it is gonna navigate to your padding subheading. And then on the padding, we're gonna see horizontal padding. So we want our horizontal padding to be at 30, and then we're gonna keep our vertical padding the same at 10. When you are done, make sure that you navigate to fill under appearance. Now under appearance, you're gonna see fill. On fill, we're just gonna click the plus sign or the add fill. Now as you can see, our button is now white, but let us give it a bit more color. Just gonna turn into pink. Our button is now pink. As you can see, our corner radius is now 10, making our button corners much more smooth. When you are done, we're just gonna navigate to the button test. And then under the button test, we have under typography is enter. So we're just gonna keep it at enter. And then it is bold. And then we're just gonna keep the weight the same as bold. And then on fill, let us keep it white to make sure that our button is a bit more nice and thorough. Also, now you have created a button. Make sure that you name. So just gotta name this primary button. Also, before you continue, before you do anything, make sure that you test your button by typing anything. So we're just gonna remove the button test and type anything to show that our button is now responsive. So this indicates that our button is responsive. Now, when I type back to button, it should resize with the words. Awesome. Now, when you are down, your button is now interactive. Now, the second thing, which is the second phase, is to make sure that you have a variant. Now, we're just going to add a variant by duplicating our button. Just going to put it there, and I'm going to name it button hover. So what do we want to do is we want to add a hover effect. So we're just gonna put this as hover. So instead of hovering to fill, we're just gonna make sure that it hovers to outline. So instead of having a much more lighter shade of pink, what we'd rather do is make sure that we hover to outline. So just gonna navigate to, make sure that you have selected your primary hover button. Navigate to stroke. You're just gonna click the plus button, click the fill, and then make sure that you click the eyedrop so that your stroke can take the primary fill of the primary button. Once you are done, make sure that you release and then navigate to fill and make sure that either you unhide or you completely remove the fill option altogether. Then you navigate to your button test. As you can see, our button test is now white, so we're just gonna change that to pink, which is the color that the primary button has, then you are done. So even if you've created a primary hover button, make sure that you test to ensure that it's responsive. As you can see, our primary hover button is responsive. Once you are done, we move on to the third stage, which is to create a component set for the button. So we want to create an interactive and a responsive button. To do that, you're gonna select the primary hover button and then select the primary button. Navigate to your right panel. Under design, you're gonna see there's a frame, and then on frame, as you can see, there are 3 options. You have 4 options. So you have the code, which is the markers ready for dev, and then you have the create component option, and then you have the create component options. Just gonna click that. After clicking that, you're just gonna create component set. After creating component set, you are now, well, we have now nested this button into one to make sure that it is one button with multiple variants inside. But for our case, we only have 2 variants, which is the primary button and then the hover effect button. When you are done, it's just going to navigate to your right panel. So instead of clicking on the design, it's just going to click on prototype. When you click on prototype, the easiest way to do this, navigate to the primary button. It's gonna, when you click it, you're gonna see as you hover, there's a plus sign. Click the plus sign and drag it to the primary hover button and leave it. Once you have dragged it, you're gonna see a box pop up that says interaction. On interaction, you're gonna see trigger. On trigger, it says on click. So we don't want this button to change to outline when we click it, but rather we want it to hover. So we're gonna click there while hovering effect. Make sure that your action says change to, because when we hover, we want this primary button to change to the hover effect button. And then on property, make sure that it says property, it says primary hover. As you can see that we want the primary button to hover to primary hover. And on animation, we're just going to keep it to instant so that it can hover instant. But as you like, there are multiple other effects that you can use, but we'll be able to cover that on the next segment. When you are done, just close this. And that's it. Make sure that you navigate to the design panel. So we're just gonna take our component 1 button and rename it to button. As you can see, this is now our button. Just gonna take this and put it on the side. We are now about to test the button to see if it works and whether or not is it interactive and responsive. So I'm just gonna add a frame that says button test. The importance of naming frames and components is so that you can be able to keep track and have a consistent design system that you can be able to track and monitor at all times. Also, it makes it easier for dev to be able to work on your Figma file. So this is our frame. What we're going to do is that we're just going to take up a button and put it here on our frame and prototype it. So when you look for your button, you can now, if you want your button, you can navigate to your left panel. We can see there are files and then assets. Just gonna go to assets. In our case, here's my button. Just gonna take it and drag and drop it into the button test frame. Just gonna put it here. I'm gonna click the frame. I'm gonna click prototype, and then I'm gonna click flow starting point. Then after clicking flow starting point, I'm just gonna click preview and making sure all right, this is our flow through and this is our preview. As you can see, as we now hover into the button, it changes into an outline. At the end of the day, you have an interactive and a responsive button also.